Tyler Roth, welcome.
What's going on? It's good to see you.
Mate, thank you very much for coming on the show. To give you a bit of an introduction, I don't know what your precise job title is. Is it senior colorist?
Yes. Yeah. Senior colorist with Company 3. You got it.
Senior colorist at Company 3. I'm very personally grateful for having you join us today. How is life? How are things over in Los Angeles?
Life is it's different, obviously, but it's good, all things considered. You know, I'm fortunate to be still working. Obviously a lot of the industry has changed very rapidly, particularly on the production side, just because many restrictions. You know, even in LA, things are technically legally opening up like next week, basically, but it's now down to the liabilities, you know, the insurance, the bonds, like all of these things that, you know, yes, while we can technically be, out on sets, will anybody be, or when will anybody? And then once they are, what is that going to look like? You know, obviously a set environment is, it's not very COVID friendly. It's a lot of people, usually a lot of enclosed spaces, all kinds of factors that are going to have to be re-examined. But no, I mean, we're doing good. I've got a setup here at home, a Resolve setup here at home. Yeah. Since
are you just working at home, or are you going into the office at the moment?
90% from home. Basically the first or second week of March, I basically built up from materials at the office, built up a Resolve system at my, in our second bedroom. And I've been doing practically all of my short form, all of my commercial and music video work. I did a pilot from here as well. Pilot.
How much work have you managed to achieve in this time?
Sure. Maybe look that up. Quite a bit. I mean, I'd say maybe in the last 3 months, there's only been a couple of days where I haven't had something. Now, granted, some of those days could be, pickups or revisions on yesterday's job or that kind of thing. But no, it's been busy. I've done, like I said, one TV pilot, probably 10 to 15 music videos that were either shot before lockdown, right before lockdown, or some that were kind of on the sly on the download during lockdown. And then probably in the ballpark of 30 to 40 commercial campaigns. You know, some of them were just like one commercial. Some of them were repurposed of stuff that I did, stuff that was shot a year ago that we'd already graded and then repurposed by the brand to be more applicable right now, or something new. Actually, a good example. One of my clients is Planet Fitness, a big gym chain of gyms here in the US, and we do tons of work for them every month. When this first happened, they obviously had to pivot immediately, pull all of their content that was.
Were they just about to go? Were they just about to release?
Well, they're releasing stuff every almost 2 weeks or so. So it's kind of a rolling thing. So it was very noticeable when it switched to, instead of the normal gym footage and different plays on that, it was immediately pivoting to user generated content. Their trainers were at, in their own living rooms, and offering to, stream classes to gym members. That played out for a few weeks, and then it started to pivot to, well, when we reopen, this is what it will look like. There'll be space between treadmills, and
so proactive. We had that happen basically in slow motion, but I guess people were understanding that gyms and stuff were going to close. But I don't want to say it caught us by surprise, but it kind of did. It was like, obviously a lot of things are going to change. We understood that a lot of things were going to go online. I mean, case in point. But then it was like, that's just insane. I can't imagine. I know LA is the film town. It's no surprise to anyone that it's going to be busy and there's a lot of stuff going on, but that's insane work ethic.
I was surprised. I mean, well, in backing up even before that, like I think none of us really expected, so when this all went down, I was 2 weeks into Black Widow up at Marvel at the Disney lot. So we're like just getting started on Black Widow, which was supposed to release like May 5th. So obviously that's
okay. Hold on.
To the fall.
Is this the one that was the secret project that we couldn't talk about?
That was the one that we couldn't talk about. Yeah. Yes. And we can talk about it now.
I'm so happy.
Or at least a little bit we can talk about it. But yeah, basically. So yeah, I was 2 weeks into that, and everything started to happen. People were starting to be like, well, we might be shutting down. And the talk was, we're shutting down for a week. It's like, wow, we're shutting down for a week. Like, this is crazy. Like, what are we? amazed, like kind of, you know, at the time, foolishly or whatever, just how did we know? It was kind of like, wow, we're not working for a week. This is kind of cool. And then it was like, all right, we're not working for 2 more weeks and 2 more weeks. And then we'll check it. And then now it's just, you know, now it's pushed to the fall. But, you know, at the time it was basically just like in the moment, I certainly, and I feel like a lot of people didn't understand what this was, because how could we, you know?
Right? None of us did. I mean, first and foremost, congratulations for getting that gig, because obviously we had a conversation.
Oh, thank you.
We were sat in your office and you were like, there's a Marvel project coming up and I may or may we can't talk about it. And I was like, what is it? Come on, you can tell me, I won't tell anyone. That's congratulations first and foremost. But
thank you.
I mean, you talk about how involved are you in the color process on that situation? Because in my head, I know that coloring on films has changed dramatically. You know, if we look at the processes of, well, I mean, you know, if you go way back, obviously when you look at film and stuff, but obviously even when it comes down to right now, where feature films go through different processes. So it's like, right, feature film might get shot, cut, and then go to grade. At what point are you actually implemented in that process? How early on in the look process you brought into that process? So
Marvel is definitely, and I can't speak too specifically, of course, but Marvel is kind of its own entity, separate from like any other feature film workflow process that I've ever been a part of, and it's well acknowledged. I think like Marvel it's very much its own thing because there's such intricate, detailed, visual effects heavy, specific films, right? And there's a
and you've got to conform to certain parameters, right? It's like it's so well established now that certain things have to look a certain way and all that sort of stuff, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's very specifically crafted as it has been over the last whatever, I think it's like 10 years at this point. So yeah, it's its own animal completely. To give you a sense, without getting into too much detail, so the team, it's not like I'm the only colorist on Black Widow.
Don't spread the detail.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, no. So it's a very, I mean, typically there's 1, maybe 2 colorists on a film project, right? There's usually a supervising colorist and a colorist, or it's just, you know, there's 2 movies that I'm wrapping up right now that I am doing out of our studio in Santa Monica they're just me. They're my film with the director and DP. But Marvel is its own thing. So Jill is the supervising colorist. I'm the senior colorist. Then there's 2 other colorists that are in charge of the 3D version of the film. And then another colorist that is doing all the marketing and trailer work. So 5 colorists already, 2 producers, an associate producer, 1 assistant right now, probably will be 2 at some point. And that's just the company 3 team. That's just the color team that's on site at Disney. So it's just a massive, you know, we have at least at this point, or when we shut down, and when we reopen, we run 3 of their theaters, like 3 of the theaters at Disney. We just basically take over for 6 weeks. Right. And then I think as it gets closer to release date, we'll take over a 4th theater and then a bay for like the HDR versions as well. So yeah, it's a very different, I mean, it's really amazing to be a part of, but it's a very different setup, workflow, team sort of environment than any other feature film.
I guess that's my first question, really, is like, you know, the workflow wise, obviously you've got 5 different people, continuity, consistency. How the hell are you dealing with that? Obviously, I know you work very, very closely with these people, so the relationship's got to be part of that, but where do you even start with that if there's 5 people on it?
Yeah, I mean, so, and it's not, they're not all on it at the same time. The two guys who are doing the 3D version, they're not going to start until we're well into the 2D master version. So, so really at this point, it's
different skill sets, is it?
Yeah, different skill sets and just different pipelines, different approaches. So like, you're not really going to start the 3D version until the 2D version is approved or nearly approved enough to be able to move forward on the 3D version.
So the
obviously
3D requires you to be at a certain stage within your mastering process before you can actually start getting into the next process.
Yeah, otherwise you're going to be redoing work in 3D that is then signed off in 2D, and then you have to redo it. And there will be some of that, of course, but
is it more labor intensive in 3D then? Is that the reason?
Well, it's more like it's more of a order of operations. Like we want to get, like Jill and I will get the 2D version, the 2D theatrical version. That's our master. That's the hero. From there, you're going to derive the 3D version and the home video, like the home deliverable version from the 2D. Like, so at least so that it's not three totally different versions out there. You're going to get the 2D version, exactly where we want it, and then start to derive those other deliverables, other versions from it. So it's more, it's less of it's not a free for all.
That is driven from the 2D master, which is obviously yourself and Jill in that situation, and then you're delivering something that then has to be, ultimately just not copied, but to a degree copied, and then made sure it's mastered for the different versions, right?
And then optimized for HDR, for streaming, for 3D, whatever it is. Yeah. So so in those 2 weeks where we were actually working, it was mostly, it was primarily Jill working in one theater, myself working in another theater, just working through different reels. I think it's a longer film. So there's a few reels there to get through. And it was just kind of, divide it up and start working on stuff. I would finish a reel. She'd take a look at it. I'd start filling in the gaps on reels that she'd started, maybe, now have, 200 visual effects shots that were now dropped in. So just kind of throwing stuff back and forth. And it's very much a team, and Jill's great to work with. So it's been really fun.
I got twofold there. How do you even look at that in terms of getting organized? Like, you're just saying, like, I got this, we're dealing with it together. But I guess that starts from the look, right? So you're initially working with the director and the DOP combination, or is that studio decision? Like, where's that look thing? Are you involved in the look process as well?
Yeah. So actually, Marvel's a little bit different in that it's much more about the Marvel team kind of takes the place of, not takes the place of, but they're much more hands-on, I think, than I've ever seen a studio be. Typically, it's more, I'll do a pre-grade on the film just to get everything kind of balanced out, evened out, put at least my direction into it. Yeah. And then I'll work with the DP for, it totally depends, but maybe 12 or 20 hours with, just with the DP to do what they want to do. Then the director comes in, we get, so that we're all happy there. Then the studio comes in. So it's much more of a kind of a layered process. Whereas with Marvel, it seems it's a bit more, the team is just more hands-on from the start. They've been in pre-production. If I had to guess, they've been in pre-production on Black Widow alone for 2 years or so, in concepting and designing the world and that kind of thing. So it's a little bit, Marvel's definitely an outlier in a very cool way.
Different machine altogether, isn't it?
Yeah,
it does blow my mind how much actual preparation. When we consider we're just like in any other format, we're just grateful to have as much time as possible to have 2 years in pre-production. Developing.
I'm guessing there, but just that would not be an outlandish guess.
Absolutely, you can't be far off in that regard, and that's the thing. To have that kind of anywhere near that time, even to have multiple months. A lot of these things spend that time in script because obviously it's being developed or whatever. But to have that in art direction, to have that in the universe being developed, even with all of the previous with all the previous films in there as reference already, it seems like it's interesting.
A lot.
How do you feel about you talk about Marvel in that way, being a committee, I guess there's a team involved in that. Do you prefer that, or do you have a preference in terms of being like committee driven, or would you rather work with the director DP combination?
No, it's a good question. I don't know, like generally speaking, I don't know that I have a preference, as long as, if it's a committee, as long as the committee, the team is aligned, that would be the only, and I'd say that translates to anything. It translates to commercial work, music videos. Like, for commercials, I could have the director, the DP, the editor might be there. I could have someone from the actual, they could have someone from the actual like brand there, creative director. Like, you could have 10 people, 12 people in the room, and rarely do they agree. So in that case, it gets a little bit, delicate to sort of navigate who's making the calls, but you don't want to it gets a little bit tricky that way. But
someone have to stand down in that situation, is be like, right, this guy's paying me, so I have to shut up right now.
Usually it gets very much solved. For commercial bays, like I'm in the front of the room and the clients are behind me, so usually it gets solved behind me, like internally. Like they figure out
behind you.
Yeah, they just figure out like, all right, cool. which way are we going with this? So no, I mean, that's part of the colorist job in any discipline, commercial, music video, long form, whatever, is kind of running the room and knowing kind of how to walk that balance when there is conflicting ideas. But at the end of the day, I mean, like and I think we've even talked about this. Like I'm not a button pusher. I'm not just gonna, all right, make it more blue. Now what? Like, I want it to be the best work is always a collaboration. So it's always going to be, the DP might have ideas. The director's like, no. And then we try it. And the director's like, nope, I actually kind of like that. I mean, there's this back and forth that really, you land at something that individually, the three of us, the director, DP, and myself, probably wouldn't have landed on, but it's something that we've all kind of crafted together. So that's, so to answer your question, I don't think I prefer one person versus multiple. It's as long as it's a collaborative environment.
Well, it's a fundamentally huge part of the whole thing, isn't it? The reality is I might, as a director, come to you and have an idea in mind of what I might want to look like. I mean, we discussed, I'm not sure how much we can talk about my film at the moment, but we'll talk about that. I'll work at how much we can talk about that. But I talked to you about a certain treatment, and I haven't got the final decision in my mind. I've only got an idea. So when I'm looking to you in that regard, it's like, well, I don't know what it looks like, but I don't have the ego to come with you and say, this is what we should do. This is the exact thing that I'm looking for. You must recreate this. And I guess that's been a learning curve in the industry, I think, for me personally, but mainly to do, personally, I don't think I've suffered that too much, but I'm aware of it. I think it's like, if you bring something to the table and you're sort of like hard and fast about it, you're never going to get the best version of it, because you're not relying on the people that are actually experts in their field to do their job properly.
Well, and almost to that point, like if you come in with, a frame that's like, this is the set of like corrections that I like, make it look like this, like why don't you just do it then? It's like, it's like, why not have like, this is my inspiration, or this is like an emotion or a mood that I want, or like references from other films that you like that kind of thing. And then let's find that look together. Like I said, work with someone that, I do this 10, 12 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week. So it's like, there's
you're going to get
there's many. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that I'm going to have found over the last 13 years that because so many directors and DPs are learning the color correction tools, which is amazing. Cause then they can, at least to some degree, know what's doable, what's realistic, what's reasonable. And at least have some of the terminology.
Yeah. They have some expectations that are actually can be met, rather than just going like, I want this to be this, and like, you should have brought me that material then.
Yeah, exactly.
Has that always been a very straightforward relationship with you and the creatives who you are collaborating with, or has that been something that's developed over time?
Do you mean like my approach to it?
Yeah, were you good at that straight away? Did you find that come naturally to you, or was that something that you've do you feel has gotten better over time?
It's definitely gotten better over time. I think just the more you do anything, you're going to get better at it and find what works and what, maybe what doesn't work as well. But I think right out of the gate, I was at least, I'm a collaborative person to begin with. So like, I think right out of, as I was coming up, years ago, it wasn't, and I'm confident in my taste and aesthetic, but I'm not, I don't know, like, I'm not going to like say it's my way or the highway. Like, I was always kind of I've always been very collaborative. So just to be able to, as I was coming up, as I was coming up in the industry, like it wasn't foreign to me to be like, all right, you think this, let's try it, so like, yeah, I think it's gotten better and easier over the years, but it wasn't something that was terribly hard to learn or get comfortable with. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, let's get into that. How did you come through the industry? Like, where did it all start from you? Did you always want to be colorist, or did you have it in your head that filmmaking, we haven't had these conversations. I'm really grateful that I get to ask these questions, but like, where did it all start?
Yeah, definitely. So I went to undergrad at Northwestern University, just north of Chicago. Mm-hmm. And I went there thinking I was going to be a director, like everybody does, right? And but I was also very on the technical side as well. So I built my own built my own PC and was doing a lot of the like editing and visual effects components just because.
You're shooting as well at that point in time? You're doing a lot of shooting?
Shooting as well, a lot of cinematography work as well. Quickly realized directing wasn't for me. It just wasn't, I don't know. I was approaching it far too much from a technical and visual standpoint that like, that's not what directing necessarily is. I mean, those are elements of directing, but like, that's not what that is. So
how quickly did you work that out? Because that's a really important part of this whole procedure, especially from my perspective. Like, how quickly did you figure that out?
Oh, I think we're on the quarter system there. So maybe 2 quarters into freshman year, like real quick, I figured that out. I was just like, all right, that's not what So I think it was by the end, either end of freshman year or like beginning of sophomore year of my second year. I kind of knew I wanted to be either on the post side. Like I said, I built my own computer, so I was doing a ton of editorial and visual effects work, but I still wanted to be on set. So I was doing a lot of like the lighting and cinematography side of things. Yeah. And through that, naturally, I just sort of found that, this sort of emerging craft of color grading, color correction, color grading, the role of colorist was kind of right in the middle of those two. It was kind of post cinematography. And I was like, well, this is perfect. I didn't love being on set. It's not an environment it's a tough environment, like no question about it. And so for me, I liked the post side of it, but I didn't love editorial. I did it kind of as a means to an end. Yeah. And I liked visual effects, but it was also, it can be tedious. I could spend 2 weeks on 2 shots, so like finding color where I was able to do, something like 150 short films and features and music videos in like 3 years. Like I saw so many different projects.
Like insane numbers, like even that.
Yeah, I mean, I basically became the colorist for Northwestern for basically 3 years or so, and just did everybody's projects. I was it was before color was as accessible as it is now. There was no DaVinci Resolve was in a totally different format. It was a completely hardware-based system that was pretty broken at the time. Apple Color wasn't even around at this point. So like it was before. I mean, in order to do color the way that we,
what did digital look like at this time? What were you working with format?
A lot of film still, and then digital would have been like DVC Pro HD tapes and like P2, the P2 recorders, the HVX 200s were like just coming out at that point. So no, I mean, it was very early days of accessible HD camera, HD options. And so, so I kind of was uniquely positioned in that I knew how to run our 2 Avid DS Nitrous systems, which were essentially at Northwestern in order to
online Avid and Nitrous HD. At the beginning, though. That's quite a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah. We were offlining an Avid, Avid Media Composer, and then those systems were there to online your HD material. And so that's what they were there for. But I took them to be, it's also a super powerful visual effects compositing system. It's also, a system that I can turn into a grading suite, basically. So I ran those 2. We had 2 bays that were, I don't know, 4 foot by 4 foot. They were tiny. Room for myself and
college, though, in the US to have facilities like that. It's like common.
Somewhat typical, I would say. I mean, like they weren't like the state of the art system by any means, but they, like I would do like a layer of primary correction and maybe key the greens in like some grass and shift those around and then hit render and come back 10 minutes later. So they were what we had at the time. So I'd say that's somewhat typical. Obviously, Northwestern has an amazing film program and had a lot of specifically post production equipment. So we were very fortunate there, but it was definitely a situation where we were using the gear in ways that were leaps and bounds more than they were intended for. But that was, I don't know, generally that was an amazing thing about Northwestern is that it was very much a, what you make of it, setup. Like the professors were amazing. The gear was great, but you could either just do the classwork and be fine, or you could do the classwork and be on set and work on post on every single film that was coming out of that school. And many of us did. So that was kind of the setup there. And that was kind of how I happened upon color correction from cinematography and visual effects.
I do find it particularly fascinating because I'm sure you have this kind of conversation. I'm not sure that you do, but I certainly know from my perspective that it comes into my mind from time to time about the whole educational procedures with any part of the industry, actually, because of course you can go and be an apprentice and work your way up through most things, but going to obviously what we call university in the UK, but college in the States, to go and obviously put yourself in that position. You hit on the head a second ago. You very much get what you put in. You're going to make what you can out of it in that situation. But not necessarily everyone is that way inclined. So what I'm hearing obviously is that obviously this is the product of what happens when you do put that effort in, and you've gone down that route. And again, grateful that we can have this conversation both in the positions that we're in, knowing that your rap sheet, your credits list is just climbing by the day, it sounds like. But it's really cool to hear that you took that opportunity and you did with it what you could and really made the most of the situation. Whereas I didn't go to film school, I didn't go to university and that sort of thing. I had a very different introduction to the industry, but from my perspective, a very different kind of way, because I had to learn everything later down the line. It wasn't as straight cut for me with your perspective. You're saying, knowing.
Well, I think I feel like there's advantages to both. I mean, they're just different paths, like university for me, definitely, it gave like the fundamentals and building blocks as far as like the actual like coursework. There's just like a natural sort of like, you learn basic editing and then advanced editing and basic cinematography and advanced cinematography. But I think almost more importantly, equally more importantly, it gave a community, a group of like-minded filmmakers that were all passionate and we kind of self-filtered and figure out who we wanted to continue to be friends with, but also be like working with and collaborating with down the road. And I still collaborate with so many directors and editors and DPs that I went to school with. So it's
another side of it, relationships as well, right? That's the thing.
Relationship, the network, yeah, exactly. So, but not that you can't create that on your own, like in your path. It's just a different. It's probably you have to be maybe more proactive and find those relationships, but also to maybe on the other side of it, you might have had a few years head start where you can like just get out there and start doing your thing. So definitely advantages.
In that time where you were at college, I was just making mistakes and finding out what I was supposed to do in the industry. I kind of knew I wanted to be a writer director immediately, and then I realized that I had a very, very large technical interest in the cinematography side, but I didn't necessarily know what that even was, and that's
how those sort of overlapped. Yeah,
precisely. And that's the thing, is like from that definitely would have been a huge benefit early on, understanding and more so respecting that part of the industry and understanding that there are definitely rules you've got to follow, even just in the fundamental side of things, which would have been, as I'm sure you can attest to, going to college and being like, all right, cool, there's stuff we need to know about cameras, and that's going to really set up the next layer of education and understanding what to do next, and how, like you said, how they actually merge together, and how they how those different departments communicate with one another. It's interesting. It's very fascinating to me, as to hear about different people's stories, certainly, but to understand where you found out how your skill set complemented what your job is, because I feel like that was something that wasn't late for me, but certainly understanding that I couldn't do everything, but you kind of have to do everything at a certain point in time. Right. Certainly from like wanting to be involved with films.
No, I mean, it's definitely a unique path, but also I'm fortunate. I found it very early, not only what I wanted to do, but this very specific part of the industry that I was interested in, very early on. And so basically like my senior year, I basically was a couple days a week at a place called Filmworkers in Chicago, which was at the time was one of two places that you would go for grading.
I was about to say, what does the film scene look like in Chicago?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of commercial work, just because there's so many agencies there. There's definitely some independent film scene as well. But I would say it was the bulk of our work was big national commercial work. We did Budweiser, Allstate, Capital One, like so many big brands, at least internationally, but also in the United States, because they're based in Chicago. Those brands had agencies that were based in Chicago, and I would say probably the first 3 or 4 years or so was still pretty much all film. I mean, we saw almost all 35 millimeters, some 16, and HD cameras were starting to be a little bit of a thing in the national commercial work. But I would say it almost jumped. I mean, it basically almost went right from film to Red and Alexa, kind of without too much of an intermediary.
Wasn't much jump, was that? It was very much like now we're digital.
Yeah. It was like Red started it and Alexa kind of finished it over the course of like 2 years. I mean, it was crazy. But yeah, so I was at a place called Filmworkers, a great place to start my career. And really at the time I also kind of had a freelance, or before that I had a freelance business when I was at Northwestern, and right after, grading, friends' projects and commercials and all kinds of stuff.
Were you and so at that point in time, or were they trying to make that digital jump?
A bit of both. I mean, it was maybe, I don't say 50-50, maybe 60-40 digital, 40% film still.
How did the project side work at that point in time? Were you tele-cineing the film to get it into a digital workflow?
Some of them would either be, they would get log scans like ProRes, I think it was before ProRes, but like uncompressed RGB, QuickTimes, that they would either get log or get a base grade, and then I would grade on top of those. But also, like I said, at the time I was working at Filmworkers, and we had a lab as well. So a lot of them would just bring their film through Filmworkers, get their film processed at our lab. Mm-hmm. And then I would do their telecine, either of selects or of the full reels. I mean, it was the full on film workflow, just because that was what was, not only because I was able to make it available to people who maybe wouldn't be as accessible to, but it was also like so many of the filmmakers that I worked with wanted to shoot on film still. So at the time, I was able to bring in quite a bit of work very quickly, right out of college, to the place that I was working at, and that ultimately led to a pretty quick rise to officially being promoted to colorist. So, and then from there, I went to another place in Chicago called Optimus as the senior colorist there. So going from a colorist at a company that had a number of colorists, right, to Optimus was a full service, so many editors, big visual effects team, and a color department. So I went over there as the senior colorist to run the color department there. And then not too long, maybe a year after that, got the call from kind of dream call from Stefan, the head of Company 3, to basically say like, yeah. I mean, it was over the course. I mean, that was when it was basically like 4 or 5 years or so, all in, of working at Filmworkers, getting the promotion to colorist, moving over to Optimus as senior colorist, and then opening Company 3's Chicago facility. So yeah, it was a whirlwind.
I guess, in that time you must have worked on, I'm trying to do some very basic maths there, but hundreds of projects in that time.
Yeah. I mean, it was, I would say like over the years, it's like on average, maybe, especially because when I was in Chicago, so much of my work was weighted on the commercial side, on the short form side.
And there's much more of them. Yeah, they're short duration, right?
Yeah. And so like for that, I mean, for commercials, I could do, I mean, even now it's like a typical day might be 2 hours on one commercial, 3 hours on a music video, 3 hours on 2 more commercials, and then go and spend time in the theater working on a movie. So it's kind of, which I love. Like I love to be able to kind of, there's some colorists who are film only, some colorists are like, TV only. Yeah. I love that I sit kind of right in the middle, where I do, commercials as they come in, music videos as they come in, getting more into some TV and episodic work. Like I said, I just did a pilot the other day. And then having a movie or two kind of going at any given time, which is great. That's exactly the balance.
Yeah. Do you find that your style and workflow complements a certain kind of project? We had Jax Harney on, who's at Envy. She's seen a colorist there, and she mentioned that her attention to detail and obviously her intricate assessment of a shot really complemented commercial work, because she's going really into the fine detail. And that sort of, when she's looking at that makes sense for commercial, because it might take her a couple of weeks to do a commercial or something. I don't put words in her mouth, but it might, comparatively longer to do a shorter duration. So she's like, if I was going to do a feature film, it would take me 4 months.
Gotcha. I mean, I think so. starting in Chicago, where most of my work was commercial work, my style inherently, I think, just naturally became more detail oriented. It was, it was a lot of, a lot of detail work. I mean, very specific stuff that clients wanted to do, brightening up eyes or labels or whatever. And so I think just naturally wanted to and had to become very efficient and very quick at that detail work. Yeah, I think it's just, so just like scaling that stuff to work, more efficiently at that style. I think when I started to do more feature work, 6-7 years ago, I think it was a little bit of a wake up call to be like, well, you can't, not that you can't work that way, but you have to approach it differently. Not that you can't do detail work in features, because I definitely do. But you just can't approach it the same way that you do a commercial. It's much more with a commercial for the most part. And I've said this before, like, and music videos for the most part, I'll go through and do my pass, and I basically will finish a shot before I move on to the next shot. I'll be, if I've got 40 shots, I'll start with the shot that's most representative, grade that shot exactly how I want it, vignettes, windows, keys, whatever I think, and then move on to the next one. And then ultimately build out those 40 shots and then play it down and see what I need to tweak. But for the most part, when I leave a shot, I'm done with that shot, at least for my kind of 95%, sort of approach to it. For a movie, you just can't work that way. You'll spend 4 months on, you spend 4 months on a movie, whereas, we've got maybe 60 hours or whatever all in. So for that, it's much more, or at least the way I do it is much more of a layered approach, where I'll do a base pass over everything, evening things out, fixing mistakes, fixing like, I don't know, anything where exposure bumped or you have too much haze in a shot where you didn't a second ago, like that kind of just
talking about exposure mistakes. People don't make
right. So just like fixing overall stuff that is problematic, that just needs to be evened out. And then, like I said, I'll work with the DP and we'll do our pass, kind of, adding whatever overall looks we want, adding some of that specific detail work, and just kind of go through layer by layer of sort of honing in on what the final result is. So very, very different approach. I don't think I think I've become accustomed to working both ways, because I think they just are inherently different. So I don't know that there's one that I'm better at than the other, but
what I'm hearing here is, Ty, is that we need to get you back on and we need to do a breakdown of how you might do those two things, because that's the things.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to me to understand the procedures within this. And I think I would say I've seen more of the cinematic and film feature workflow, having understood a bit more of how much attention to detail goes into that. Because when I've been involved in the commercial side, it's kind of been like, right, submit reference and maybe check in for a couple of hours, but it's kind of out of my hands once we've made the decisions. Whereas on the feature side, it's a very much a more in-depth process to understand what's actually happening and getting more involved in the process we're talking about. But certainly from a visual aspect, it would be great to see those sorts of things, to understand.
Yeah, it'd be fun to show a little bit more of like a breakdown in the approach. Because it is something that, we can talk about, but it's valuable to sort of see what that looks like. Yeah,
especially understanding the different parameters within the software. I mean, you talk about your early days in the career there. I'm sure that even that time pressures and what you were doing then, even in commercial world, I guess, dictated how much work you could physically do. Surely there's an amount of time that's dictated by the client and the producers, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think, over the years, it's not even become really something I think about that much, but definitely the first year or so, it was
different, isn't it? Yeah, everything's so much more streamlined, and the computer side is that much better.
That part of it, but also with that, like the time allotment has gotten smaller. So when it was film telecine, when we were hanging rolls and just doing shots out of context, that way, you might have a full day for 2 30-second commercials. You might have 8 hours for 2 30s. Whereas now, because of scanning and DI and nonlinear workflows, 2 30-second commercials might have 3 hours, or might have 4 hours. So yes, things have become a lot more efficient, but the budgets and time constraints for those are also squeezed. So I think there was
done by in this country by not having much time on my commercials. I was like, damn, I need more time. And they're like, and you got 3 hours. Like, I'm not complaining anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and every project's different, of course, but yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a skill set as a colorist growing up, like that you need to sort of wrap your head around. Is like, all right, I've got X amount of time, I have this many shots, I have this many problem shots. Like, kind of how do you allocate your time? And that's just something that you learn with experience, that you learn over time by doing and either making mistakes or hey, that worked really well, and logging that one away. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, that's something that I haven't really thought about much in a while. It's more of, all right, this is the work to do. Let's get it done.
I guess part of this process for me is kind of reverse engineering a lot of the things that we not already know, but it's nice to like reflect upon kind of how the hell we got where we are. Certainly from your perspective, as soon as I initially had a conversation with you, I was always enamored by where you're at. I was like, this is company 3? Wow. And like sat there with you, it's like, oh, this is really normal. A bit, I guess part of that conversation is really just like, there's levels within this industry, and certainly throughout my entire, evolution within the industry, it was always like, right, there's a point where you perceivably are making it, like, I'm doing the thing that I want to be doing. And then there's ultimately that realization that you're just doing what you want to do anyway. Like, just by simply being able to make films, having the luxury of being able to pick up a camera and tell a story that you want to tell is actually something to be grateful for in its, in its entirety anyway. And then when you move forward, for me, certainly a big part of that was, being in Los Angeles a few times I've been there now and been like, oh, this is the industry that I heard so much about. Was that for you? Was that company 3? Was that moment for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think just as humans, not to get too philosophical here, but we're always kind of organizing things into like, oh, this is where I was and this is where I am now. And then like, oh, what's next? Like, I think it's just inherently, at least that's the way that I definitely kind of categorize things. And that here's where I'm at now is always sort of, it's this very fluid, this very fluid sort of, place to be. I mean, I think opening Company 3 in Chicago was definitely, Company 3 was kind of always that like sort of unattainable dream. Company 3 and Stefan was Company 3 and Stefan were like, was in my the 2 textbooks that we had on color and DI workflows in college. So like you couldn't learn about color and not learn about Company 3.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that it was that, it was that much.
I mean, revolutionized the industry. I mean, basically made it a part of the industry. It was so much of a sort of a technical part of the process, and Company 3 and Stefan and the team there really, 20 years ago, really made it, yes, technical, but it's an art form. I mean, it made it the art form that it is. So, or at least pushed that significantly. So Company 3, being in Chicago, at the time, I didn't want to move to Los Angeles, but Company 3 was only in LA and New York. And so it's kind of always that sort of, like I said, unattainable sort of dream place to be because they're the best, right? And so to get that basically cold call from Stefan in like 2012 or so, 2011, 2012, to say, hey, I've heard great things about you. We want to open up Company 3 in Chicago and want you to do that. Like,
if that's a cold call, that's got to be a pretty magical phone call. You're like, yeah, whatever. This is not that person.
Who's this? No, I mean, yeah. So Company 3 was related to a bunch of Ascent Media, which was bought out by Deluxe. There's a bunch of like corporate sort of like companies that were over Company 3 at the time. And one of the editorial companies was Beast Editorial. They were in Chicago, and so there was at least a connection of like a friendship connection there that I had with them, and they knew about me. So it was kind of word of mouth that way, and then ultimately, I opened up shop there in 2012.
That becomes interesting because at that point there's an aspiration to work for a company and not necessarily to work on a certain level of film. My aspiration was always like, write, direct, feature film. It was kind of like always that procedure. Whereas,
well, I think there's still. I think for me, there's still. Yeah, I mean, it was. Getting to Company 3 was a massive milestone. Even moving to Los Angeles with Company 3 was a large milestone because it's a totally new, totally new environment, totally different market, different way of working. Than
we've already understood that you guys are churning out films left, right, and center. Yeah, it's a very different. world.
Yeah. But to that point, like so getting to company 3 was one aspect of it. But I mean, exactly like you said, I mean, for me, it's still, wanting that next movie, wanting that next, that next TV show, that next, like Super Bowl commercial, like that kind of thing. So there's, I think it's both. I mean, it's not, it's where you're at, whether it's at a facility or on your own or whatever is important to you, as far as what, sort of what your company is, looks like, or what your day-to-day work looks like, but also what jobs you're working on.
I mean, yeah, thank you for sharing your story. I really, honestly, fundamentally appreciate it. If not for myself, but for anyone paying attention and listening to this, because it's so good to know where these things are at and to know how you came through those ranks, but to hear like there's such like wonderful little opportunities that present themselves along the way as well. I mean, must be a testament to company 3 as well. Like, what they like to work for. I mean, I certainly was very enamored with them when I walked through the front door. So it's like, this is a nice place. These are good, nice people here. And the treatment I got, I mean, was second to none. But
yeah, I mean, obviously I'm biased, but they're the best. Like that's why I've been with the company for 8 years at this point. So yeah, I mean, there's no reason to to leave or seek anything else. I mean, it's the caliber of work is top notch. The facility is amazing, as you saw. State of the art gear. The client services team is amazing. The production team is amazing. Like, there's really nothing. They check all the boxes. So I've been very happy, both in Chicago and in the LA office.
What would you say are important parts of this procedure for you? I mean, I can imagine from a creative perspective, simply creative control is an element of that. But hearing that you get the first passes on things is, music to my ears. It's really great to hear that you actually do have that. I would kind of assume that in a company as vast as they are, with as much work coming through the doors, that's very much like, right, kind of do the job. But it's great to hear that that's so not the case. It makes perfect sense, obviously, being the outfit that you guys are. But, is there anything specific that sticks out to you in your workflow, in your sort of creative role? I guess in your job, it is a job at that stage. I kind of push that terminology away, being a job and work, but I guess that's what it is at a certain point in time. It's so easy to lose sight of that because it's like, so this is fun. This is what we enjoy doing. Very lucky for that reason. But is the creative control element a really prevalent part of that, or is there other elements to your job that you feel like make it really satisfying?
I mean, there's certainly creative control, because for the most part, it's me and then whoever's in the room with me, like finding the look together. So it's very much, there's very much that creative control, that sort of autonomy, yet collaboration with whoever's calling the shots. Yeah. So certainly that's a very important part. I'm trying to think. I think for me, I'm grateful that I'm able to work on such a variety of projects. I spoke about that a few minutes ago, but I truly enjoy that I can do music videos. I can do, high-end commercial work. I can work on movies. I can work on, on really big movies. I can get into TV just by saying, to the head of the TV department, hey, I want to find a show that's a good fit, and that kind of thing. So, I think being able to,
that's amazing that you get that, that communication between you and the heads of department to go, like, you actually have the ability to be like, actually, you know what, I'd like to work on something TV. Can I? Yeah. Rather than just being sort of like dictated, your job role is quite fluid in that regard. That's great too.
Yeah, it's easy. It's in this industry in general, I'd say, across all disciplines, it's very easy to get sort of pigeonholed into, you're that comedy director,
which is what I would say with my personal experience to a certain degree, if I'm completely honest.
Yeah. Yeah. In what way? In terms of like automotive and that kind of thing?
I started automotive, commercial and events and things, and then moved from that to something else. I was like, well, my interest isn't just in cars. I love the people within the car world. I love their passion for what they do, but that's where my interest is. I personally enjoy cars, love driving myself, but when it came down to it, I really found myself, infatuated with the idea of what these people were driving themselves towards. And it was like, oh, that person's committed their time to something. But I related to it. Why? Because I was in love with making films too. So it was very uncomplicated for me to be able to relate to someone else that subsequently loved what they were doing too. It was like really obvious at a certain point in time, but certainly wasn't obvious straight away. And then you find yourself sort of going down the line, I can think of countless conversations I've had with people that were interested in representing me at certain points in times, going like, oh, that car stuff you do is great. That's like, if you want to do some car stuff with us, then brilliant. I'm like, well, I can totally do that. But guess what? My skill set isn't limited to that either. And it's very easy to get sort of, I mean, it's partially my own fault, because at the same time, I'm submitting reels of stuff that I've got. I need to get out and do more personal projects. I'm very aware of that, because that's going to help these things. I'm definitely working on that one. But, you know, we've got the scripts with the features in the back burner constantly. So those things will change. I'm not mad about it by any means, but certainly as a personal experience, when you're sort of working with different, people to try and push different avenues of work, and they go like, oh, cool. Obviously what you're doing right now is working on this, this, and this. So we can get you that work. Great. I'm like, I'm certainly not tired of that, but it would be lovely to do something else, because diversity within this definitely keeps things fresh.
There's very much, like, again, industry wide across all disciplines, I feel like there's very much that, for movies, for commercials, for really anything, as people are either looking for reels or interviewing you for a position, they almost want to see that you've done exactly what they're looking to make before you've done it. It's like before they've done it as well. Yeah, catch 22. Yeah,
absolutely. It's good to know that that's well. First and foremost, it's good to know that Company 3 give you the room to breathe in that regard, and really great to see that they're adopting that. But it makes perfect sense because of where they're at. It makes sense that they would cultivate that in you guys. I hasten to say employees, because it doesn't seem like that at all. If I'm honest with you, walking through the door, it was much more like hasten to be corny and say family, but totally seems like the relationships are much more inclined to be more of family relationships than colleagues. It was so much.
We're working, we're working together so much, and with with so many different people, that it's like, I mean, it's I don't know, it's in the company's best interest for it to be a really great culture, and as close to a family as you can be. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you felt that.
Oh, 100%. If I'm completely honest, from the minute I started having conversations with you about the projects we've been talking about, that was immediately the response I felt. I think I still remember way back when I was like, Ty, look, it'd be great to work with you when I can afford you. And it was like, your response was great. It was like, don't be silly. There's always ways and means that we can make these things happen. What have you got in the pipeline? What do you want to talk about? And that was very great for me to have that reception, knowing full well that this world wasn't a million miles away from me. It was in my head, like, there's the industry, there's me. But you opened the door and just went, you know what? Let's have a conversation. And then when I was like, and even that procedure of showing you my rushes was like, what do you think, Ty? Is this any good? Do you like it? It's like the insecurity of just like presenting your work to someone was like, is it good? And then for you to be really stoked and be like, yeah, this is great. I'm like, yes. We got the seal of approval from Ty.
No, yeah, it was fun. That's just it though. It's like, yes, Company 3 is where Company 3 is at, and there are rates that are associated with that and that kind of thing. But that shouldn't be a barrier to entry. Let's like I said, let's at least just have a conversation. If it's not doable for this one, fine. Let's at least just it's great to meet and let's keep chatting. But and hopefully it is for this one. But it's like why not just chat and obviously we become friends and
we're subsequently able to have those collaborative conversations that move things forward. And it might be in my head that I've got an idea that I know needs elaborate color, and without it will suffer. But for that not to be held back in that conversation internally, it means that it gets a bit further down the line of like, right, we're kind of finding out how feasible this kind of projects are to make. But it's honestly been a wonderful experience having that with you guys and the whole team.
Good.
Meeting Jackie as well. She was great.
Yeah. No, that worked out perfectly. That she was able to pop over and chat with you as well.
Absolutely. That project is still very much moving forward, by the way. It's crazy how long that process is taking, but we are very close to hopefully getting across the line with it. So we'll continue those conversations shortly. But it does bring me on. Oh yeah, don't worry. We'll have that conversation.
Yeah.
It does bring me on nicely to talk to you about the kind of projects that you are, that you actually enjoy yourself. As have you got any highlights from your own perspective in terms of things that you've worked on that have fallen at your desk and you've gone like, wow, I'm really happy to be working on this specific thing?
Oh man,
I know there's so many.
Yes, yes, definitely. I mean, recently. Recently, it released recently. I graded it end of last year. Kelly Rowland's Coffee music video it's up on my site, and it was a fun one. It was a special one that just sort of came up, and
that is unexpected. Having seen all the things on your reel, that is not what I expected you to say. You got me.
Oh, really?
Please, I want to know now.
Yeah, it was one that was just really special. It was one where we got to it was first time working with this director, and we really got to it was kind of an exercise in sky detail work and skin tone detail work, because the entire video basically is Sand and Kelly and her team and sky, and that's it. So it's kind of all right, well, we got these 3 elements. We got people, sand, and sky. What do we want to do with it? And it was kind of a really unique one, because it was so hyper. Yeah. Well, yeah, it was challenging for sure, but it was just such a unique one, and that was just so hyper focused on optimizing these 3 sort of elements visually. And I mean, when you take a look at it, I can send you some frames too, but when you take a look at it, I mean, you'll see it's just the sky. I'm super happy with where it landed. The skies look amazing, kind of across these similar but drastically different setups. The women's skin tone looks amazing. It's just a really special one that was just so very zoomed in on this detail work that as I said, that was kind of where I started, was detail work. So
it appeals to that part of your brain to get really into the intricate stuff.
Yeah, and to be able to say all right, what would be a little bit not off-putting, but unique and but very specific. I mean, you'll see from the frames.
I fully expected you to go I was a huge Destiny's Child fan, and Kelly Rowland landed my desk. I'm just oh my god,
Kelly. That was a fun one. I'm trying to think what else. Man, I mean, that's the thing is I see so many projects and so many different projects that
the first feature must have been surely getting the first feature film land at your desk, going yes. Was that that to me as it is to you?
Yeah, I mean, features. I've been doing features for a while, and they've kind of only been growing over the last 10 years or so. The first ones were very indie, and then they've grown over the years. And by the time I was in 2000, I guess 2016, 17, 18, right before moving to LA, many of the features that I was working on were not even Chicago-based features. I mean, many of them were, but I was pulling feature work from Los Angeles, New York, from London, kind of all over the place. But to that point, actually, Minding the Gap is definitely a special one. You mentioned it, but that's definitely a near and dear, to my heart. It was one that
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I mean, you said you saw the film, right?
Yeah, I watched it a couple of weeks ago, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, just such a personal, and I don't know, it's an incredible film, and especially just the way that it takes a turn about 2/3 of the way in, and it's just wow, this is a different, this is a different movie, and just that paired with sort of the scale that he was able to, he's got him as a 10-year-old kid, and
I was honestly amazed at the scale of the project over that, and I think I've got my interest is twofold with this one, because the reality is I'm interested from your perspective is from a technical side of it. There's obviously they filmed over a large period of time, mix of formats, mix of everything, and it must have been a minefield to get your head around this. But then obviously there's the question of the film itself and the content. I mean, let's start with the content, because watching the film was an experience. I checked it out because I wanted to, I'm familiar with your work anyway, but that one stuck out for a number of reasons. Obviously the subject material, to not spoil it for anyone that wants to watch it. It's a bunch of kids that are just learning how to be alive, really, and all the stuff that comes their way, and the stuff that, the cards that they have been dealt, dealing with that and growing up with that. And it's an interesting film because obviously, it's put together by a kid, isn't it? as well. And it's like watching it unfold. You can kind of cinematically and narratively, you're like, oh, how is this? Is this something that's been put together retrospectively or with foresight or what? You're not really sure what's happening. And then you start to understand what's going on. Like you said, take a turn 2/3 of the way in, and you're like, oh, now I know the motivation, and it hits you and you're like, oh, wow. And it's like, you find yourself, well, for me personally, assessing it very technically, because I do with all films. I think none of us are immune to that. When we're working in the industry, you're always evaluating things from a shot choice, from a direction choice, writing, all these things. And as the story evolves over the course of the period of time you're watching it, you're like, right, there's some weird kind of choices here, but you realize that it's not been written, it's happening.
It's happening. Yeah, it's you're seeing Bing and his friends, over the course of the years, just hanging out. Like it starts off as like their skateboard videos, in the park and that kind of thing, and just literally just hanging out, just on the street and that kind of thing. And then it becomes a little bit more constructed, more focused. And then, like I said, then it sort of takes a turn. So yeah, it's definitely, it's especially once you finish the film, thinking back about it, and then certainly rewatching it, it's like, oh my gosh, like it really started as something just so completely not what it ended up as. And that can be documentary just in general, but I mean, this is like a very specific, very unique version of that, for sure.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like that's the beauty of documentary filmmaking, is that it's you can't recreate anything within that. It's very much the unfolding of events that gives that quality to it. Did you find your feelings change in the subject materials? I guess when you're grading it, you're working your way through it fairly methodically, going through it, working forward, working back, and then working forward, working back. How does it work? Or did you sort of see the whole project as one thing to tackle?
So this was definitely a unique one in that so basically how this came up in the first place was, a friend of mine, an editor here, who's now in LA, he was with us in Chicago. He was, I think, friends with Bing, or friends with friends of Bing, because he edits a lot of documentary work. And basically my friend Brian just said, like, hey, here's a teaser, like sort of like a sizzle reel from like a doc film that's coming up with Kartemquin Films. Check it out. And I watched it, and it was, super early stages. I don't remember how far, I mean, probably a year and a half or so before we even like graded the film. Like it was very early. And I just watched it, and it was just, it's obviously not the finessed version that ends up in the film, but it was just, there was something just very, very special and very, hard hitting and emotional and human and just all of these things. I was just like, whoa, like this is really amazing. And I basically cold called the director. I cold called Bing and just said, hey, what you got here is amazing. Our mutual friend Brian, shared this with me, and we just started chatting about it. And I just kind of wanted to hear kind of sort of a bit of his thought process, where he wanted to go with it. Just kind of like hear more about it. I was really just drawn into it. As I'm sure you can understand.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. And so, it started off as a conversation with him. And then of course, like in my mind that shifted to, well, man, I would love to collaborate with you, on this. I'd love to, be the colorist on this. And at the time, color was already pretty much locked in with sort of an in-house studio. But the more we chatted, I think it was a few conversations. We basically just figured out a way to make it work, and he brought the color over, and we became friends and worked on it that way. So I think
you were still in. You were still like, yeah, I want to be a part of this.
Yeah, it's never worth, or it's never not worth a shot, right? If it's something you really really believe in, and I did, and I think so. So to your question, going into that movie, there was a lot of a lot of backstory for Bing, but more backstory for myself than I have on most films. Most films I'll director or whoever will approach me and say, hey, I've got this film coming up. You want to take a look at the script? Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Like a lot of times, actually, I like to just see the locked cut and watch it as a movie, the way a viewer would watch it, without having sort of any predisposition to it, just so I can be kind of like
ultimately there, because working out if you're working your way through, but if you're watching a locked cut before you get to color, that's great insight.
Oh yeah. But I just mean even not watching rough cuts, not reading scripts, that kind of thing. For the like, sometimes it depends. But I like to see the movie as it is, as someone in a theater or wherever is going to see the movie right before I go into colored, so I can see it kind of with the eye of the viewer, and then obviously that'll change and shift the more I get more familiar with the film. And not to say, don't take this the wrong way. I don't want to be unfamiliar with the film before I go in. I definitely want to be, but like, I don't want to be seeing
too many preconceived notions about it, right?
Yeah, I don't want to be seeing rough cuts 6 months before we're grading necessarily. I might scrub through to get a sense of things, but I like to really feel the movie, like feel the movie that I'm going to be grading, not some 20 versions earlier version of it. So anyways, for Minding the Gap, it was a little bit different in that I'd seen that teaser. I watched rough cuts because I really wanted to see where it was
before you even got it. Yeah.
I really wanted to kind of see where it was going. I don't know, see how it was evolving. It definitely evolved, over the course of time, over various edits before it was locked. But so for that one, I definitely went into it with, to your question, there was a technical approach that had to be there because there was a technical approach that had to be there because it was. Honestly, I think it was something like 12 different cameras over how many years, 12 years or 15 years or something. So there was a bit of a technical pass that we did first. We're being laid out.
Side of it. How do you even deal with that? Like, obviously you've got some, I presume, no RAW formats. I'm presuming you're dealing with all RGB formats, digital, I presume, but I don't know. What are you doing with that?
Yeah, it was. I mean, there was video codecs. There was some just baked in Rec 7 or 9. There was some log material. I mean, it was a mix. We kind of half joked that it was like, what camera did you shoot on? And it's, all the cameras. So, there were, all of them. So, what they did is, being laid out basically a string out of camera 1, camera A back in, whatever year, 3 or 4 shots, camera B, 3 or 4 shots, and basically just did a string out so I could start to work through, basically generate sort of a show look that worked across all the cameras. It might not be ideal for all the cameras, but at least either kind of brought them all into a similar vibe or similar space. And then I would grade each camera separately.
Something that works for everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. Just making something that wasn't going to break any of the cameras, most importantly, but then also start to creatively push where we wanted to go. And, ultimately we ended up with, I think a really unique or a really special look particularly for documentary, because documentary,
I think it looks great, honestly. I think it's great.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, documentary is interesting because it's like, it's kind of it's technically it's always a puzzle, right? But creatively it's kind of a matter of, how much of a look can you give it without it being like off-putting or without it feeling unnatural in a bad way. I mean, there's so many different sort of ways that you'll interpret such a stylized look on what is supposed to be something playing out sort of in real time. So
more often than I should, it's like stylized versus non-stylized when it comes to documentary, but it's like at the end of the day it's all film and it's all a medium that we're trying to get something visually interesting out of. It's a visual medium, so it's like, why not find the best version of that? And if it's a stylized, not too heavy, but that's the thing, there's some looks in that film that really, I'm like, yeah, okay. It's like there's enough style in it. It's not, it's not jerking. You're not removed from the sense of the film, but it's just like nice. And it's,
I think we found that balance. We definitely did some sort, some filmic curves to give it some grit and give it some character. Yeah. Some cool into the shadows, not like it's moody, but not like oppressively moody. I mean, it was really finding, it was balance. It was all balance, which is, it's a skateboard movie, so that's funny. But no, it's like, it's like finding the right sort of combination of techniques that gave it some style and gave it some character without. I love
the fact that you mentioned it's a skateboard movie, and I'm like, I totally thought it was a skateboard movie too, and then I watched it and I was like, this is not a skateboard movie.
Exactly, and that's what I mean. I don't want to get too much into that. But
so good. I want people to watch it
because exactly. I want people to watch it because it's such an amazing film that it's a film that is like wrapped up in another film that you think it's going to be. Yeah, it's amazing. So no, that was a really special one. I think just kind of figuring out what that one should look like. And I couldn't be happier with where it landed, with where the look landed. And then obviously premiered at Sundance, picked up by Hulu and then nominated for the Oscar. Like I'm very happy with how that all played out, but no way did I see that.
I don't think anyone could have
sort
seen
of chain of events happening when I saw that sizzle reel and called Bing. I mean, it was pretty amazing. Actually, when we were out here in LA, I think it was here for a work trip. I was going down like Santa Monica or something and saw like a massive billboard for Minding the Gap, and it was just like kind of a moment. Talking about milestones, like another moment of like, cool, like that's it's pretty neat. So that's definitely a special one.
To be properly emotionally invested in that as well as physically and time invested in that must have been a great moment. I'm looking forward to my first billboard. But yeah, from your perspective, I'm sure that must have been great to actually know where those kids have literally come from. You find out in the film their stories, and it's like just a wonderful experience. And to see this kid has made this film and it's there.
Yeah. No, it's pretty amazing for sure.
That's so cool. Honestly, I really appreciate you sharing that story with us, because like for me watching it, I could feel that about it, and I feel like I don't feel that's lost in documentary filmmaking right now, but we're certainly in an interesting kind of evolution of documentary filmmaking where we're getting towards more of the sort of staged documentary.
There's becoming more, I think more of like it's becoming a little bit more nebulous between what is like real, say, verite documentary, what's actually playing out versus what's a little bit more constructed, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. I just think
there's stories you can't tell in some ways. I get that. So I'm not, on it.
Yeah, it opens up, I think, some more possibilities and more ways to tell that same real story more cinematically. But I know, I think I know where you're going. It can be misused. It can be misleading. So no, I mean, it's balance again, finding the right balance of those elements.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? I don't mind some of the shows. I think I really enjoy a lot of the shows. They're sort of ones where they, going on an exploration, but it becomes it's more factual TV that becomes more documentary style, I think. Whereas some of them, I mean, we just watched The Pharmacist and we just got to the end of that and I was like, this is incredible. But then actually some of it's a bit too, not too far, but a bit too far into that added drama stage. And
I haven't seen it yet. It's on the list, but yeah, it kind of crosses good. That. Okay, I've heard it's great. Yeah,
it is very good. I'll give it that. But I personally feel a bit tricked when I get a cliffhanger at the end of the episode. I'm like, if I'm interested in it, I'm going to keep watching it. There's a couple of cliffhangers that will frustrate you because you just have to keep going. But I know their formulas. I know how they work with this sort of stuff.
I wonder if part of that's part of what you're reacting to there, or part of the reason why that's there is because, like, due to the streaming platforms, Netflix and Amazon and Hulu, HBO Max, etc. Like, because I mean, they've basically given such a platform for documentary. There's so much more documentary, like filmmaking, and so many more docs out there that I wonder if like that's what is used to kind of help separate. Like, well, if we give a cliffhanger, they're going to watch it all the way through. Maybe, I mean, it could just be a part of the sort of natural progression of this boom in documentaries that we've seen in the last 5+ years.
Where do you think it's going next? I mean, I think obviously, like, I know a lot of it's been promoted by the morbid curiosity side of things. People definitely have a fascination with, like, the cold case,
so like true crime.
Yeah, true crime. That's the genre, isn't it? That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah.
And fair play to it. Some of it is desperately fascinating. I struggle to think of examples off the top of my head, but there was the NFL player that played for the New England Patriots. Aaron something, I believe his name was. Aaron Hernandez.
Yep.
And it ends up broaching the conversation about CTE and all these things. And I was like, okay, and I don't mind that because it's still sensationalized what has happened, but it's the way it's constructed, that storytelling, to get to the point.
Yeah. And no, I mean, exactly. Like at face value, I watched that one at face value. Yeah. It's sort of the true crime story of this murder, but then, it gets into mental illness, and it just touches on all of these different
in a way that I
related,
don't mind, because it's so easy, especially with the like you said, the amount of documentary filmmaking that gets done. It's really hard to get the balance right. It's really easy to mess up when you're talking about very poignant subjects. And
Sure.
you know, it's our duty as filmmakers to make sure that those things, I mean, Minding the Gap is a case in point. It's a perfect example of like, that's something that these kids are dealing with. And not to spoil it again, something these kids are dealing with. And you could so easily cross the line with that and make it too emotionally manipulative and make it too much about what's going on with them and make it really sad about it all. It's like, oh, but you know what? They've done it in a way that says this is real life. And this is what people are dealing with. And with the Aaron Hernandez doc, it was very much like, okay, all this stuff happened and it's insane, but actually there's a root cause to it. And if we do start evaluating it, it's more about, we're not going to get into that too much, but actually, you know what? It's a good way of broaching that conversation, especially within a sport where the conversation is pushed to one side. And I don't
bringing some like sensible awareness sort of through another, through another vehicle of this sort of this true crime scenario. So yeah, no, that was a really, was it 3 episodes, like a 3-episode or 3-part?
I can't remember that. There's a few episodes for sure.
Yeah,
I was hooked in each and every one of them because I was just like, I'm not usually getting drawn into this kind of thing because I know the format, and you know what?
Yeah,
life is hectic enough. Sometimes you don't need those kind of stories in your brain before you go to bed at night. You're like, right. I just need to sometimes believe that the world is an idealistic place where, you know, nothing bad happens. Everything is good. I kind of sometimes need my my viewing to be something a bit more pleasant.
Mindless comedy. Yeah, exactly.
Rarely, to be fair, but yeah, for sure. Sometimes I like to think that all of my tastes are dictated by really poignant films with a real metaphorical point, but it's far from the truth most of the time. When that's my kind of day to day, I'm really getting into the heart of a story and I'm trying to really get to the meat of something.
Yeah, that's not necessarily the first thing you want as soon as you have a moment of free time.
Yeah, like I'm turning my brain off now. I don't want to turn it, like get back into it. But actually, I do enjoy things. But I think that's probably the barometer of a good film if I'm watching one these days, is the ability to be able to sort of like just immerse myself in a different experience and not think about the editing, the coloring, or the camera movements or the dialogue. Like, I think that for me is probably the biggest barometer of a quality of a film these days, is probably how immersive it can be and how much I can suspend my disbelief and just go like, I'm in this. I'm not thinking about that stuff. I can't think of the last film I watched that really did that for me. I feel like it was something embarrassing probably, but I can't think. I'm joking. What was the last great movie you watched?
I was trying to think as soon as you said that.
I think about it.
We've been doing a lot of TV, like a lot of like streaming. We finally watched Fleabag, which was incredible.
No way.
We hadn't seen it.
I don't know where I thought that the humor might not translate very well, but
we loved it. We watched, they're not long, but we watched both seasons like in like 2 days. Like, I mean, we just loved it. It's just like, it's one of those shows. I thought that my wife and I both felt that like it's rare when you see like a movie or show where every element of it is just spot on. The writing, the casting, the performances, the tone, the cinematography. I mean, every single element of it, I just thought was so spot on. We absolutely loved it. I just love that it's like, and you can't really, I'm sure people have, it's hard to define Fleabag. Like, what genre is it?
Well, this is why I'm particularly intrigued, because from my perspective, it's out and out comedy. But at the same time, I'm sure there's disparity within that in terms of like how you guys are watching it and evaluating it, just because of the type of humor and how, potentially very offensive it is as well.
No, I mean, that's just it. It was kind of all over. I mean, it's definitely comedy. But I mean, there's moments where you're so emotional. I mean, you're like almost in tears. I mean, it's just like this roller coaster of a show. We loved it. Absolutely.
Did we watch the same show? I'm kidding. To be fair, I mean, it's one of those interesting shows, and I find myself evaluating film and TV, I mean, fairly constantly, because obviously I'm looking at what films I'm bringing to the party as well. And, one of those projects is the documentary that you and I have been thinking about over the last X months. But when I think about it more in terms of the traditional routes that I've been, embarking on with writing and directing, you have to be aware of what you're making and where it fits within the industry, because you'd be foolish not to. You can't just go, oh yeah, I'm going to put this out and it's going to get bought by someone and we're going to go make it, because it doesn't fit for the right slate or the right studio. So what? It's not the right time to make it, and you gotta go back to the drawing board. So you can't get too emotionally invested. But I do find myself kind of looking at the state of TV and film, and in so many regards, documentary filmmaking is in a great place because there's such a great platform for it. Features. I don't know, man. I don't know how do you feel about streaming? I know a lot of your clients are streamers, so I feel like you have to be a bit careful with this sort of stuff. But how do you feel about the current crop of films, quality-wise?
Oh, I mean, I think there's just so much out there. It's now, now more than ever. There's just, especially
gotten better, or has it gotten worse? I'll tell you straight away, I feel like it's gotten worse. But at the same time, there are like real diamonds in the rough that really still shine through it, which are great.
That's the thing. What I was gonna say is it's kind of like more of each. I don't know if it's gotten better or worse, but there's just I feel like there's so many more accessible, great films and shows that just because there's so much more content out there, but there's equally as many, not so great stuff that Netflix just wants to pick up or whatever to I don't know. I don't know that it's gotten better or worse, We
need to get someone from Netflix on here and ask them, don't we? Why are you buying all those movies that we don't like? There's some great ones on there.
Monthly subscription. Subscription.
Funny one, isn't it? But at the same time, they're doing so many wonderful things for filmmakers, because the reality is, like, where there's money, there still is innovation and there still is great stories. And there's people getting opportunities that would otherwise never have had them. So it's such a double-edged sword, isn't it?
I think it is, but I think it, if any, or I think it leans positive, because it's, it's just, like you said, it's giving opportunities to people, like to filmmakers. But I would say, going back to documentary specifically, like before streaming was as ubiquitous as it is now, like documentary, like you'd have to like seek out a documentary and you have to like look to find, like hope it goes to a theater. If it does, like find, track it down.
You might never find.
That's what I mean. Yeah. It's like, so I think it's done an amazing thing for filmmakers in general, but for sure, just orders of magnitude, benefits to documentary filmmaking.
How are things in the movie theater world over with you guys at the moment? Are you starting to see things open up again, or is everything shut?
As far as I know, everything's still shut down. Things are starting to open up, like I think gyms and restaurants have started to open up and that kind of thing. I think, I don't know specifically, but I think it's going to be not only a little bit, a month or more, many months before theaters open up officially, but then also before people feel comfortable going to them. I don't know that.
Of course.
I'm certainly not going to.
Where my interest lies, really. Of course, you've been working on Black Widow and they've pushed the release date already. What does that mean for them? Are they going to be looking at these home premieres I've been seeing on Amazon and stuff? Or
I can't speak for them, of course, but I kind of doubt that they'll jump to a home premiere. It's certainly a go to Disney Plus. But I have to imagine they're wanting to see how things play out. It's more beneficial to them, if I had to guess, for them to see how things play out and see how people are going back to the theaters, and then sort of, use that data and sort of target that to find the right timing, and then move to Disney Plus is my guess. But hey, things are changing in the world every day.
It's all speculation. I understand that you can't put words in people's mouths as well. It's just intriguing. I think I got my first email from a movie theater this morning going like, we're opening again soon. And it was obviously good to know and good to see those sorts of things. But like you said, we just can't tell what people are going to be doing and how people are going to be feeling about that. Judging how things have been going so far. For me, the whole process of being a filmmaker is like, it needs to be at the movie theater. I want to see it on the big screen. I'm so very much like in love with that idea of seeing that whole thing at some sort of time in the future. So fingers crossed they stick around.
We'll get there. I think it's just going to be an interesting, sort of an interesting road to that point, but hopefully we'll get there.
How do you feel about the movie theater / like streaming thing? Are you like an avid movie goer when you can get to the theater, or?
I mean, I like both. I mean, as you can probably tell, I'm not necessarily one for extremes. Like I like both. I think I love every time I go to the theater. I just love it. I think that almost no matter what almost no matter what the movie is, I kind of feel what you're talking about, that sort of immersive, like I'm in that world, just because just the theater experience lends itself to that.
There's no phone, there's no, like distractions and stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, also, I don't go to the theater a ton. So when I go, I'm going for a movie that I'm probably really excited about. So that could be part of it too. But no, I mean, I think the accessibility that the streaming, I just pointed at my TV, but the accessibility that the streaming options provide, I think that's so valuable. I mean, that's something that, that really revolutionized how you can distribute. So I think there's strong advantages and strong advantages to both, and I enjoy both for different reasons. I like the casual, hit pause or go make dinner for a few minutes and then come back. You can with streaming, but I love that immersive experience.
I'm sure don't just so many people do the whole way through.
Right.
You've
sit there the whole time. Can't move.
Focus. Absolutely focus.
Yeah, we're watching a movie here. Come on.
Do you feel the opportunities? I mean, I kind of asked this question already, but because we've gone back to the movie theater thing, I think I'm learning more about this process almost by the day, by the week, certainly, by the month, certainly as well, about how those movies are distributed. Like, is there still room for independent cinema at major movie theaters with this in mind if things continue the way they're going? Because in my head, I'm like, right, I'm not necessarily going to be banking on the major studio going for my film immediately, because it's not necessarily something that conforms to the masses necessarily. Does independent cinema still have a place at the conventional movie theater?
I think it will, depending on how things play out just generally or globally. But I think they will, just by the same reason, like the same reason that we're talking about the merits. Like we want to go see, those special and unique films on the big screen. There's something different about seeing them on the big screen versus waiting until they're on Netflix or whatever. I think there's enough. I maybe optimistically believe there's enough people that are similarly minded to wanting to see that and seek out those those non-blockbuster films, those more specific, whether it's documentary or narrative, made for a nothing budget or whatever they are, like just unique sort of different aspects of filmmaking that are still important, in so many ways. Yeah,
it's just intriguing to me because we have a bit of an independent cinema scene here. I don't know what it's going to look like. As I said, that's kind of why I provoked the conversation. Mm-hmm. We got Everyman Theatres are one of them. They're much more of like a national chain of independent cinema, so to speak, but they're much more niche films. They make, tend to have more, less mainstream titles, I guess.
Yep.
But it's just, it becomes interesting, like to see, even before all this stuff was happening, that it was very much like, right, the big movies are going to be at the theatre, but the smaller ones, not necessarily. They might find themselves directly to streaming platforms. I think of a couple of recently that were still technically mainstream, but not necessarily in their subject matter. Peanut Butter Falcon by but what Shia LaBeouf, obviously. I was like, this is a really cool film that I wouldn't have made the movie theaters here. Might have made them over with you guys because of his, and it's got a fairly mainstream cast, but certainly over here it wouldn't have. And we're definitely waiting to come to streamers. I might be wrong there, by the way. I might have gone to theaters. I might have missed it. But typically speaking, I know there's a divide. I know LA is definitely better for this. But, there's just that much. I mean,
it's just part of it's so much more of the just the culture and sort of the vibe here that the economics will support that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Even little things like, like what's it called? Tarantino's theater, the Beverly, where it's got like they play everything on film. I went and saw Seven there with a friend of mine, and I was like, it's like watching a different movie. Honestly, I hadn't watched it in the theater. I was too young when it came out, probably. But seeing that in an actual proper movie screen, on film, I didn't realize there was moments of humor in it. There's like funny
different feel to it, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's funny scenes in this crazy horror movie, which is obviously a crazy thriller by David Fincher. And we're like, oh, what? Like, did I watch a different film before now? That's what
it plays differently in the theater. Yeah.
Yeah, which was like definitely a big eye opener for me. And that was a few years ago now, but it certainly reminded me to have respect for the viewing experience. Not that I needed reminding, because I love the theater. I love going to the movies. I love the whole experience. I love the big screen. I love having, you know, despite the fact that people might interrupt you and whatnot and that sort of stuff, but that's part and parcel of the process.
Part of it. Yeah, exactly.
Well, honestly, Ty, thank you very much for today. Thank you for sharing your stories and everything as well. I mean, quick update on Black Widow. What's the deal with that? When's it coming out? I'll
have to look at I want to say it's October 30th or very like 1st of November. I forget. It's somewhere end of October, early November at this point.
So we can actually check out your work at, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
And I'm excited for totally. You and Jill worked on that, right?
Yeah.
So excited for Jill as well. Jill worked on the Joker, right?
Yep. I helped her out on trailer stuff on that one as well. So yeah, we've been working together on a few films since last summer.
Amazing. Oh, man, I was supposed to ask you a question about that. Jax Harney, who popped on a previous episode, wanted to know how long it took to color the Joker. So I've got to ask you. You know?
I don't know offhand. I would say so. I don't know offhand. I would say I can give you the extremes. How about that?
Come on.
So I'm on a movie right now called The House Next Door. That one, I think we have 45 or 46 hours of color, like just built into the schedule, just over the course of a couple of weeks. Right. And then, like I said, Marvel is somewhere in like the 6 to 8 weeks, like all in. So a lot more. Joker. Yeah. So it totally depends. I mean, like, Joker, I would guess, is somewhere in the middle, but that'd be a question for Jill. I'm not sure exactly. Because also, like for some of these bigger, these bigger studio films, Marvel aside, it's not like, all right, we're going to work for 2 weeks and then we're done, right? It's like we might do the opening teaser trailer 6 months before the movie comes out, and then a month after the first teaser trailer, do like the first full trailer, and then 2 weeks after that first full trailer, start the full film, work for a week or so, and then not do anything for a week, wait for a bunch of visual effects shots to come in or reels to get updated, and then work for 2 more days, and then not work for. So it's much more staggered and sporadic.
Yeah, it's can be what exactly a precise schedule might look like.
Yeah, and also like whatever might get bid, it could change. It could go faster. It does go longer. I mean, it really depends. So no, I don't know specifically for that one, but I've got a longer like World War II aviator movie coming out it's going to be pretty involved. Lots of visual effects, period piece, and I think it's going to, at least the director's cut is starting at 2.5 hours, and they'll be cut down from there. So it's going to be a beast. And that one's much more up in like the neighborhood of like 90 hours or something like that. Something
90 hours over how many weeks though? Like you're talking in hours. How the company works.
Yeah, that hasn't been determined yet, because I think we're trying to figure out if we're going to wait for all of the visual effects to come in and then just do it all at once, or start. I think it'll be that way. So if it's that case, then it might be 90 hours over the course of like 3 weeks.
Wow.
So, but every movie is different. It's all, I mean, there's so many variables. It depends on, on budget, on, maybe is the director in town or not? Are they remote? Are they starting their next project? I mean, there's just so many of these variables that
same way you've got to deal with everyone's schedule when you're putting a film together in terms of production, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Oh, mate. Honestly, thank you very much for sharing your story with me and the audience today. It's loads of insight.
Thank you.
I'm very, very grateful for you. Just share your time with us, let alone to share your stories with us. So I gather it's a different time of day for you to what it is to me. It's just going to 7 o'clock in the UK. What time you got?
Yeah, we're just hitting 11 in the morning. So
11 a.m. The whole day is ahead of you.
The whole day's ahead of us.
What's your day looking like?
Got a few jobs, a music video, and then a couple of commercials that started yesterday that spilled into today. And then I actually just got a notification. I was supposed to go into the theater today for The House Next Door, and that moved to Tuesday. So I've got a little opening. So it's nice.
What are you going to do with your day, man? You got free time?
No, I got to figure that. I haven't had time to start planning,
Well, I'll let you get back to that, mate. But again, thank you so much for being our guest today. Thank you for sharing your story. Congratulations on all of your success, because it's great to hear. I'm personally very grateful to hear these things, and I'm super happy for you with Black Widow and finding out. A friend of mine's actually in that, which is hilarious.
Oh, no way. Oh, nice.
Extra part, which is hilarious. I don't know, is there a scene in a prison with a barber?
Yeah.
He's
with a barber?
Is he cut?
Interesting. Okay.
This is what I need to find out.
There's a prison scene, so I can say that it's in the trailer. So yeah, I'm not sure.
Amazing. So if there's a barber in it, we know he's not been cut from the film. But if there is,
I'll keep a lookout.
If you could let us know ahead of this release, that would be hilarious, because we get to maybe just send that rush over. Send a shot over. Yeah. I won't tell anyone.
just on the down low.
Just on the down low, and we'll see if we can incorporate.
Funny.
Dude, it's all good. We'll catch up very soon. Thank you again. We'll let you know when this is all airing as well, so we can keep you posted on things. But thank you again, buddy.
Sounds good. No, thank you so much. I'm glad we could finally align our schedules and make this work. This is fun.
That's all good. So good.